So welcome back, everybody. We are honored to have the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, with us in studio today, and there's a lot to talk about. So thank you very much, first of all, Mr. Vice President, for coming.
Great to be here.
It's great to have you, and I do want to get to as much as we can with you, so I'll jump right in, if I may. And I want to start with Iran, because we're watching this back and forth in Geneva, and it's happening as, I think we can put up on the screen, the impressive presence, military presence that we have in the whole area. I think it reminds people a lot of what we saw off the coast of Venezuela when there was this question about whether or not we were about to take military action. It looks very much like that. You've got Iran today halting traffic in the Strait of Hormuz for a few hours. We heard the Ayatollah say, well, one of your nice warships might end up at the bottom of the sea. Where's this going?
Well, I'm obviously not going to make any announcements today. I think the president has a lot of options. We do have a very powerful military. The president's shown a willingness to use it. He also has a remarkable diplomatic team. He's shown a willingness to use that, too. And so what the president has been very clear with the Iranians, and actually I just talked to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner this morning about some of their negotiations, is the United States has certain red lines. Our primary interest here is we don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. We don't want nuclear proliferation. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, there are a lot of other regimes, some friendly, some not so friendly, who would get nuclear weapons after them. That would be a disaster for the American people, because then you have these crazy regimes all over the world with the most dangerous weapons in the world, and that's one of the things the president has said he's going to prevent. Now, we would very much like, as the president has said, to resolve this through a conversation and a diplomatic negotiation, but the president has all options on the table. And, one thing about the negotiation I will say this morning is, in some ways it went well. They agreed to meet afterwards, but in other ways it was very clear that the president has set some red lines that the Iranians are not yet willing to actually acknowledge and work through. So we're going to keep on working it. But of course, the president reserves the ability to say when he thinks that diplomacy has reached its natural end. We hope we don't get to that point. But if we do, that'll be the president's call.
Well, the president said on Friday that the best thing that could happen would be regime change in Iran. And we know that that's what the Crown Prince in exile wants to see as well. He's saying, don't do an Obama in this situation. Don't make some kind of deal where we release $6 billion from Qatar and let them go along with the ballistic missile program. Don't do that again.
Well, I think the president will do what he thinks is in the best interest of the American people. I think he's shown very clearly that he is not Barack Obama. He takes a much different approach to America's national security, and he's much more willing to act aggressively to defend America's national security. But the president of the United States is very much trying to find a solution here, whether it's through diplomatic options or through another option that means that the Iranians cannot have a nuclear weapon. That has always been the main focus. If you go back to the campaign that he ran in 2015, the Republican primary campaign that he won, he said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I think it's very important for the American people to appreciate it's one of the most hostile and also one of the most irrational regimes in the world. You can't have people like that have the most dangerous weapon known to man. It would be awful for our security. It would be awful for the future of our children. That is the goal of the president of the United States, and he's got a lot of options and a lot of tools to make sure that doesn't happen.
They say we don't have that. We just have a peaceful program, and there's no way we're ending our peaceful nuclear program. So it's very hard to see, and you're not even mentioning the ballistic missiles or the support for the proxies. Are those also things that would be part of a package in any sort of deal, or are they not on the table?
Well, look, everything is on the table. We certainly want Iran to stop being a state sponsor of terrorism. They're one of the world's largest state sponsors of terrorism. There are a lot of ways in which they endanger America's national security, but the most important way they could is if they acquired a nuclear weapon, and that is the red line the president of the United States has consistently said. Yes, of course, the Iranians say that they're not interested in a nuclear weapon. We know, in fact, that's not true. They have shown a number of things that make it clear that they're interested in acquiring a nuclear weapon. Our goal is to make sure that doesn't happen. And again, the president has a lot of tools in the toolkit to make sure that doesn't happen.
So let's look at Europe for a moment. A lot of focus on the Munich Security Conference.
Sure.
And last year, you gave a very strong speech there that got a lot of reaction. There were a lot of long faces, actually, in the crowd from the European leaders. You talked to them about borders, about free speech, about, defending yourselves for a change in Europe. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, was there, gave a speech that had a lot of similar underpinnings to it, but they were applauding, and they thought it was great. So what happened with that? Why is that the outcome?
Well, I heard somebody say that I was the bad cop so that Marco could be a good cop. Okay. I mean, he gave a great speech, but he drove home, I think, a very important point that the Europeans have largely forgotten, or at least had largely forgotten over the past year, is that the reason why the president or Marco or me talk about borders, the reason why we talk about them spending more on their own security, the reason that we talk about them more for becoming a vibrant economy again is that we want Europe to thrive and we want Europe to succeed. The problem that we have with Europe is not that we don't like Europe, even though you hear that from the European press. It's not that we don't respect our allies. It's that they are doing a lot of things to sabotage themselves. We would like that to stop. We would like them to be an ally in the true sense of the word. And I think that's what Marco's speech very, very ably delivered. It was a great speech. I'd actually encourage people to watch it because unlike most of these speeches, which you hear a lot of slogans and a lot of cliches, he actually outlined a very smart view of American foreign policy. And it's the foreign policy we've been pursuing for about a year and a month.
Yeah, I mean, my sense was that they're starting to come around from when you gave that speech. And now they hear Marco Rubio's speech. It almost sounds like they feel that they also want Europe to be what it once was. We'll see if that.
I think that's true. Some of them are coming around. Some of them are still, the message is falling on deaf ears. I think it's a mixture, but I do think that we've made a lot of progress. And look, if you just go back to one of the critical things the president said when we came in is we wanted Europe to spend more on its own security. That's definitely happening. He also said he wanted Europe to protect its borders more, to actually maintain its civilizational coherence. That's happening a little bit. And he also said that he wanted Europe to take free speech more seriously, and that's also happening a little bit. So we've made a lot of progress, but frankly, we want our European allies to do a lot better. We want them to do better for their own sake, but also because we think they can be better partners in the process.
So you've said that Marco Rubio is your closest friend in the cabinet. I know you have a lot of respect for him. Here's the question that always comes up. The president was asked it on the way home on Friday. Watch this.
Marco Rubio received really positive reviews in Munich. Is there
very good review.
Is there a scenario in which you would support him at the top of the ticket in 28?
Something I don't have to worry about now. I've got 3 years to go. So it's something I don't have to worry. JD's fantastic and Marco's, they're both fantastic. I think Marco did a great job at Munich.
So what goes through your mind when you hear this all the time? Because people talk about it all the time now. I know you're going to say, oh, it's far away. But people say, well, who's going to be at the top of the ticket? Do you wish that he would just say, he's my vice president? Of course he's going to be at the top of the ticket.
Well, I think the president is very smartly saying, we've got 3 years to go. And how about everybody focuses on the job the American people elected us to do, rather than something that is very far in the future? As you said, look, Marco is my closest friend in the administration. I think he's doing a great job for the American people. But most importantly, we all have to continue doing a good job for the American people, from the president on down. And that's what we're focused on. I think it's so interesting. The media wants to create this conflict where there just isn't any conflict. Marco's doing a great job. I'm trying to do as good of a job as I can. The president's doing a great job. We're going to keep on working together.
But surely, as vice president, you'd like to be president.
Would I? Well, look, I think, again, I'm going to try to do as good of a job as I can right now. So one of the things that I don't like about this question and this entire perspective is I've been in this job for all of a year. About 6 months ago, a year and 6 months ago, I asked the American people to give me this job that I have right now. Why don't I do as good of a job as I can in this job? We'll worry about the next job sometime in the future.
Okay. Here's another person who may want a different job in the future and is definitely doing some reflection on how things went for her in Munich. Watch this.
Would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
I think that this is such a, I think that this is this is, of course, a very long-standing policy of the United States.
Martha, you bring me on your show and you show me the most uncomfortable 20 seconds of television I have ever seen. My takeaway from that.
What happened there? What do you think?
Well, I think it's a person who doesn't know what she actually thinks. And I've seen this way too much in Washington with politicians where they are given lines, and when you ask them to go outside of the lines they were given, they completely fall apart because, look, does anybody really believe that AOC has very thoughtful ideas about the global world order or about what the United States should do with our policy in Asia or our policy in Europe? No, this is a person who is mouthing the slogans that somebody else gave her. And it shows
no one gave her one for that one.
I guess not. And it shows how thin the Democrats' policy actually is on all these very, very important questions. Look, that was embarrassing. If I had given that answer, I would say, you know what? Maybe I ought to go read a book about China and Taiwan before I go out on the world stage again. I hope that Congresswoman Cortez has the same humility. I'm skeptical.
All right, we're going to come right back. We'll talk about the midterms and what you're expecting when you look at that race. We'll be right back.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.